Welcome back, everybody, to the Peer-to-Peer Policy Pod. I'm Brian Morgenstern here with Sam Lyman. Uh, Free Ross is now Freed Ross. We have the new golden age of Bitcoin, a national energy emergency in a good way, and lots more to discuss this week. Sam, where to even begin? The Trump administration has begun with such a flurry of activity. It's hard to choose. But where should we
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, there's so much to touch on today. In addition to Ross having been freed, we have DEI being dismantled. We have the border emergency has become official now. We have Bitcoin hovering around all-time highs, and it feels like nature is healing. It was a week of many celebrations in different parts of Washington, and for us, Brian, it was a week of inaugural balls, including the crypto ball. The crypto ball, in my opinion, was maybe the hottest ticket around town. We had the good fortune of being able to go, and it marked such a significant shift in where we were as an industry just a year ago. So, Brian, I know you had a lot of fun at the crypto ball, met a lot of VIPs. What were your impressions of the crypto ball, big takeaways, and some of the highlights for you?
Yeah, so I'll start. Big takeaway was that our time has arrived. It really was like the hottest ticket in town. It was the most fun inaugural ball I've been to. I went to a lot of events over the weekend, and as you might imagine, when hundreds of thousands of people descend on Washington, D.C., it can be a cattle call. There's a lot of security in place. Logistics can be very difficult. But the crypto ball was pretty well managed and orchestrated. It's hard to imagine even just 4 years ago or 8 years ago, Snoop Dogg, Rick Ross, and Soulja Boy headlining a Donald Trump inaugural ball, but that's exactly what happened. And there were celebrities from all over the place at the balls. Why don't we throw up the first tweet instead of pictures? So the besties from All In, I am a huge fan, so got to see them. They took a picture with my wife and not me, which was just due to how crowded it was, but it was very fun. I actually took the picture of them all together. I didn't get Twitter credit for it from JCal, which is like the most JCal thing ever. I feel like he owes me something. But no, it was great to see them, and I was able to talk to Sachs for a moment and tell him about Bitcoin mining and the companies involved. And so hopefully we'll be able to have conversations with him and his office as the new crypto czar and with the new presidential advisory council. So that was great stuff. Dylan, the next one you put up was me and our incoming Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum. I think that was the second time I've met him. He's very nice, very friendly. Of course, a governor, an entrepreneur, an energy titan cheerleader for the U.S. He is due to help lead the National Energy Council that President Trump is creating. And the gag that I have with him is that I am convinced he is the reincarnation of George Washington. He looks a lot like him. So Fox News personality Katie Pavlich and a dear friend of mine have been pushing this on Twitter for a while. Also via Larry Kudlow, my former White House colleague, thinks it's hilarious as well. The incoming Secretary of the Interior, head of the Energy Council, and first President of the United States, Doug Burgum. It was great to speak with him. Did we have any others to run through it? There's my beautiful wife, Teresa, with her adorable baby bump. We were there at the Starlight Ball, which was one of the inaugural balls on Monday evening after the inauguration. And my takeaway from that, first of all, it was a beautiful ball. Getting into it was a nightmare because of security. Trump was supposed to show up with JD Vance and the Trump family and Usha Vance. They were supposed to show up, I think, at like 8 o'clock. They showed up at about 12:30 a.m. just after attending events and speaking with people, talking about all sorts of different things that are going to happen in the Trump administration. I feel like I had the easy job. And by the end of all of this, I could barely walk. I was so tired. Trump went to all the events and signed 200 some executive orders, did multiple press conferences, and at 12:30 at night was still dancing to the YMCA. I don't know how he does. He's twice my age. I honestly, this guy is built different, as he likes to say, but truly he is. So very good weekend. Saw many people, a lot of old friends and new. and we had a great time. So it really does feel like a totally different atmosphere. Celebrities not afraid to be around Trump. Carrie Underwood performing at the inauguration. She was fantastic, even with a technical difficulty and the accompanying music not playing. She just sang an a cappella and killed it. So it's just a different time, and it's a greater time to be alive. That's for sure. So a lot of fun at the inaugural balls.
Yeah, it's such a different time, like you mentioned. I mean, think about where we were just 1 or 2 years ago. We were in the depths of the Bitcoin bear market. It looked like our industry at different points wasn't going to survive because of the hostility coming from the administration. The Biden administration, for those who may not know, they issued an executive order flirting with the idea of finding a way to limit or eliminate Bitcoin mining in the United States. Those are the exact words from the order. In addition to that, you had Elizabeth Warren attacking Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies at every turn, trying to delegitimize it in any way they could, trying to essentially ban it to pave way for a CBDC. And now, fast forward to the present, where we go to the crypto ball this weekend, Brian. And like you mentioned, it's a who's who, not only of Washington VIPs, but of global celebrities too, like Snoop Dogg. Biggest highlight for me was seeing George Santos there. He wasn't going to miss an event like that. So it was
Tara would never miss such an event.
exactly. So George Santos was there. Elton John, I heard, was there as well. I mean, it was a truly remarkable event.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, just an amazing event. And we've come so far as an industry. What happened in the last year? How did we come so far so fast? And where do you think we go from here as an industry?
Yeah, I mean, so a couple of things. One is we finally decided to use our power as citizens. People who want alternatives to the legacy financial system finally had a little bit of organization. We were able to band together and identify these voters, put money towards it, and educate and galvanize people to actually make this issue poignant and important for politicians. Over the last 4 years, one of the things that's happened and that we now see coming into mainstream consciousness is this debanking scandal that, of course, as we have talked about in this podcast, is only the tip of the iceberg in terms of kind of political discrimination and weaponizing the government. So finally, people really got motivated over the last 4 years, and over the last year, they turned into a really powerful voting bloc. And that's a beautiful thing about our democratic republic, that the voters really can tell those who govern us what they want. And that really did happen. And we wound up with obviously some very famous and powerful allies who had similar views. So I think that's kind of what happened, is we got our act together and we made our voices heard. And we went from being outcasts, portrayed as weirdos in the basement, to the cool kids in town. And what a difference a year makes. That's for sure. It is a different era, and that is a very good thing.
It seems like the crypto ball was almost a microcosm for what's happening more broadly in the culture, where the vibe between the 2016 Trump inauguration and the 2024 Trump inauguration couldn't be any more different. And I know you were there for both. And 2016 felt like a very chaotic time. Obviously, mainstream media had a lot of pullback then, much more than they do today. But today, my biggest takeaway from the inauguration speech was one of hope, one of optimism, one of dynamism. Felt truly like a new morning in America. So I'm curious what your take is on not only why crypto has evolved so much, but why such a different mood, why such a different feeling in 2024 with Donald Trump than we had in 2016?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would begin with a comment that you just made, that the mainstream media has a lot less power, that alternative media has really come into its own and helped to expose a lot of the hoaxes, from the Charlottesville hoax to the suckers and losers hoax to the Russia hoax all of these narratives that were perpetuated fell apart. And I think people started looking for better and more information. And so that really prepared them to start thinking critically and to open their minds to maybe voting a different way or advocating for policies in a different way. I think that in 2016, the manifestation of what we're saying, The dominance of misinformation led, of course, to rabid protests. I mean, I remember walking around Washington, D.C. around the inauguration 8 years ago and seeing a car on fire on the street, all the windows of businesses boarded up. The so-called peaceful protests really were starting then because I think people's eyes weren't opened yet, and they really thought this might have been something that's bad for the country. They thought it was like a Putin op or something. People were incensed. This time around, people were much better informed in the country, and Trump won not only a clean sweep of every swing state, he won a dominant electoral college victory, and he even won the national popular vote. And it was based on that positive overall turn in the information environment. And so I think it took the wind out of the sails of the haters and losers, of which there are many, and it turns to this very interesting coalition of working people who want the system to work better for them and to be responsive to small d democratic demands, and the techno optimists who want our country to succeed in this very competitive environment through tech, through energy, uh, through scaling back the government and taming inflation. It just wound up a totally different coalition, totally different environment in a really, really positive way. So, but I think it starts with that information, sort of the defeat of censorship, the discrediting of the hoaxers, and promulgating more and better information through alternative media like podcasts, like X changing hands, things like that. I don't think can be underestimated. I think they really did contribute to what we're seeing today.
You mentioned the coalition between techno optimists and the American working class. The visibility of that coalition was impossible not to see during the inauguration itself. I mean, who would have thought just 4 years ago that at Trump's inauguration, you would have standing behind him the likes of Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Tim Cook, CEOs who were very much against Trump in 2016 and 2020, but have since come over to the Trump fold. That was really interesting to see. And I think it shows just how much things have shifted in the last 4 years. Trump's speech, in addition, Brian, you mentioned the media, how much less power they have today. You mentioned the new coalition as well. I also think that there was a shift in Trump's messaging that allowed the Trump mission, the MAGA mission, to have broader appeal to people. I think the biggest difference between 2016 and 2024 can be summarized in the themes of those respective speeches. In 2016, we had American carnage. And in 2024, we had the golden age. And so let's listen to one of the high points from Trump's inauguration speech on Monday.
Have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in American history. With your help, we will restore America's promise, and we will rebuild the nation that we love, and we love it so much. We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God.
Right. So he talks about the golden age throughout his speech, and it's sort of the meme that has been going around the internet this week. The golden age has begun. Those who don't support Trump may not feel that way, but it's hard to deny that there is a sense of optimism in this country right now that precedes my being born, honestly. I've heard a lot of people who are much older than me talk about the feeling they have now is very similar to the feeling they had when Reagan was elected. Of course, there's a lot of interesting historical parallels there. Under Jimmy Carter, there was an energy crisis. There was a loss of national confidence. It was called that period of time the national malaise. And then after that, Reagan came in with a very robust, energetic, unapologetically patriotic message. And we went from national malaise to the new morning in America. And it feels like that again today from the people I've talked to who are older than me, from the history that I've read. And I'm curious, in the meantime, though, how did we go so quickly from American carnage to the golden age? Why the shift? And do you think that this meme matches reality?
I do. So let me start with this. So the opposition to Trump overplayed their hand so dramatically that they strengthened him. And when we had an administration that was putting the boot on the neck of energy and tech and so many other things. And the economic and job growth, now the Biden administration loved to talk about how great it was. It was overwhelmingly government growth, if you actually dig in to the numbers. And people felt stifled. And you cannot keep the human spirit down. It can't be done. People were yearning, hungering for optimism, to take off the shackles of the victimhood mentality, the screeching, the rioting, the nastiness of the opposition, and they wanted to run towards this optimistic message. And Trump was the vehicle for that. He's been that for decades. He's been somebody who loves to talk about how everything is going to be easy and it's going to be great and we're going to do it fast. And this kind of optimistic language he's talked about in his books, about how it's important to think that way. I conceptualize it as kind of a shoot for the moon and land amongst the stars. And that's kind of the way he talks. And it was what people were hungering for after this era of just attacking him, attacking anyone who would dare to question the orthodoxy of the sort of establishment. And so he's this vehicle for delivering that kind of optimistic attitude that people were yearning for economic growth, for getting the government out of their lives, and for realizing America's potential. That's really where what people wanted, and I think that's what he's delivering. And the Carnage speech in 2016 was the beginning of a section of our history where he started to expose the kind of establishment bureaucracy and how it preserved its power and how it essentially existed to perpetuate itself. And people were exposed to that, and they understood that the American Carnage speech, I think, educated them about what the challenges are. And then now that they know that, he was able to pivot to, we now know what the challenges are, and here's how we're going to kick them, and here's what's going to result, this golden age. So that's how I conceptualize it, but I don't know if you have a different or better way of doing that.
Yeah, that's how I conceptualize it as well. I think some of the most effective politicians are powerful storytellers, and Donald Trump is one of those powerful storytellers out there. I don't think he was incorrect in diagnosing American carnage. I mean, you look at the chaos that ensued during the summer of 2020, for example, and the rise in crime under Biden. Everything that Donald Trump pointed out under the banner of American carnage was either true at the time or came true later under Democratic governance. So I think he was spot on in that description, but you also feel that people are ready to put that past behind them with the golden age. And the golden age, I think, is three words that capture a very strong vibe in the country right now, where people are ready to be optimistic again. Being optimistic is a key feature of the American DNA. Elon Musk was talking about this the other day. To be optimistic is to be American. And I think that optimism is something that was missing amidst that culture of victimization, amidst that culture of hating America and being pessimistic about the future. And so it's so nice and so refreshing to have that restored today. Brian, I'm curious, just talking about the golden age, what do you think the golden age means? Just given everything Trump said in his speech, what do you think will be the defining features of this golden age that he hopes to usher in?
It's quality of life. It's improving our standard of living. And there are a number of metrics you can measure that by, but optimism being one of them. I think we're going to see optimism indices from individuals, from small businesses, from large corporate CEOs. I think we're going to see those go up. I think people have had their minds expanded regarding the possibilities of what we can achieve. Look, it wasn't that long ago when the greatest generation saved the world from fascism. Then we immediately went right into the Cold War and defeated communism. America is the country that put a man on the moon. It is the country that started the internet. It is the country where the airplane and the automobile were invented. America has made the standard of living for the entire world so much better in our very young history. We should think this way, that there's no limit to what we can achieve. But that had started to slip away because we were taught that There's oppressors and the oppressed. We were taught that success happens on the backs of others, that, everything is a zero-sum game, that if some people are doing well, it means they're taking things from other people rather than growing this pie. We've had, 5% GDP growth in the past. We were told that we have to just accept this new normal of 1 or 2%, and that the disparity in the haves and have-nots is destined to grow. And it's not true. There are things we can do to make everyone better off. In the first Trump presidency, wages were rising for working people faster than they were for their bosses. We had growth happening faster. We had more companies being formed. We had more dollars being onshored and more growth at home. I think we'll return to some of that. And it's because of, not to abuse, the president's slogan or the trope, but when the leaders of the American people, the people elected by American citizens, put America first and the quality of life of American citizens first, then we start to become that shining city on a hill again that's going to make our country stronger, our people's lives better. And then what happens is actually people around the world have better lives as well, and a more peaceful world. So that's how I think about it. For Bitcoin, I think it means that we're going to be free to operate and innovate and create alternatives for people that they are yearning for. And it's going to result in more jobs, more growth, and a better quality of life. So, and sounder money means purchasing power will be a lot more stable than it has in the past. So it's just all of these things come together, but the thread, the main theme is just improving our standard of living for all Americans and showing the whole world that if you have a really good system of rules and rule of law, you really can achieve things that people didn't think were possible.
I liken the America First philosophy to the oxygen mask principle on a plane. If your plane starts to go down, you're always told by the flight attendants, put your own oxygen mask on first before you help other people. I think there's something to be said about the United States and the application of America First. In the same regard, if America puts on its oxygen mask first, puts America first, there's a trickle down effect from that seems to benefit other countries, that seems to benefit the whole world. That was our philosophy throughout the most of the 20th century, I'd say. And look at the positive effects on the world. It's when we started to put other countries and other philosophies before ourselves, including, for example, the ideology of globalization, that it seems like America started to wither. And as a result, the country did as well. But if we can replace our emphasis from globalization to America First, I think that bodes well, not only for our country, but for the world as well, as we continue to lead in dynamism, in technology, and in all other areas. So it's a really exciting time to be alive. I'm not tired of winning yet, but it is sometimes exhausting just to see how many wins come one after another, but not even we're close to feeling too tired of winning. A lot of that winning came this week in the form of executive orders as well. Donald Trump signed a flurry of executive orders in his first couple days here in office. And these executive orders ranged from EOs to dismantle DEI to opening up energy production across the country. So, Brian, let's talk about the executive orders. Of all of the dozens of executive orders he's signed so far, which do you see as the most consequential, and which do you hope to see still?
Yeah, it's a great question. I just want to make one point on the conversation we just wrapped up, which is that Trump talked about on the campaign trail that inflation is a country buster. And we've mentioned before, but it bears repeating, that if you look at all we've spent on foreign wars in recent decades, that is a big driver of our inflation and currency debasement, which has exacerbated the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It has led to a lot of societal unrest. It harkens back to George Washington's warning about foreign entanglements that can ultimately end up weakening a country because you end up debasing your currency to service other clients around the world, and you don't take care of your standard of living at home. And then that can lead to unrest a French Revolution type situation. So Trump is absolutely right that focusing on America first is actually going to make us stronger, and a strong America does lead to a safer, stronger world order. To your question on the executive orders, I think the two most important things he's doing right off the bat are with regard to the border and energy. The border, because it's about our national sovereignty, and the incoming Treasury Secretary made an excellent point when the anchors on a Bloomberg show were sort of debating him about this. They're saying, well, we need more workers in the country. So if they're all streaming in through illegal immigration, doesn't that ultimately increase our GDP? And he made the point, well, if that's your position, why don't we just have a glide path from Tierra del Fuego all the way to the Rio Grande, and we'll just import anybody who wants to come, and we'll double GDP, but GDP per capita for American citizens will plummet. So the point of the president of the United States, the point of this job is to make American citizens' lives better. So I think the border situation is critically important. And on energy, as you and I have written, energy is the baseline for everything. If you don't have abundant energy, you do not have economic growth, you cannot have innovation, and you cannot increase the standard of living for people. And if you don't have enough energy, you're going to have inflation, you're going to have scarcity, and you're going to have a very tough time competing with other countries. So I just think the border and energy are the two most critical. I think we, of course, because of what we do for a living, are very curious to see what he does on Bitcoin and his crypto advisory council. The number one issue is whether he would establish a national Bitcoin strategic reserve or strategic stockpile, as he mentioned in his speech at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville. I'm optimistic that that will happen very quickly. And that in addition to that, hopefully Senator Lummis's bill gets some traction in Congress. But there are lots of things that he's doing. But those are just a few. If I have to choose, those are a few that I'm looking at.
Yeah, let's zoom in on the energy issue, because I know that is a centerpiece of Trump's America First agenda. Dylan, can you play the clip of President Trump signing the executive order about energy generation in Alaska?
Next, we have Alaska, sir. This is an executive order relating to unleashing Alaska's potential as an energy reservoir for the entire nation.
And what about ANWR?
I believe that would be included in aspects of the order.
We're opening up ANWR.
On the same side, piece, President Trump, you and your members of your team now used to warn about the danger of TikTok spying on America. What game does you not worry about that?
Well, it depends on the deal. I mean, I may not do the deal, or I may do the deal. TikTok is worthless.
Yeah, so we had him signing an executive order there to open up energy production in Alaska, which has been closed for the last 4 years. In addition to that, Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, which is a huge boost for domestic energy producers here in America. And President Trump also took the unprecedented step of issuing a national energy emergency. So Dylan, can you pull that up? So here we have the national energy emergency. Brian, this is something you and I have talked about a lot. Like you mentioned, we're even writing about it right now. Let's kind of lay this out for our listeners. Why is it that a national energy emergency is so critical at this time? And why is this something that President Trump would do on day one of being in office?
Well, because some of the biggest failures of the Biden administration trace with a direct line back to energy and the disastrous energy policies of both the Biden administration, and we see it at a state level in California under Governor Newsom. Biden came in, he nixed the Keystone XL pipeline, he put in impossible standards on oil producers. He, of course, favored all sorts of electrifying things and renewable energy, but you need fossil fuels to even create the products necessary for some of those things. It led to much higher energy prices for Americans, which led to much higher prices of everything for Americans. And already talked about how inflation hurts working class people. It increases the value of assets for wealthy people. It's an economic disaster when you hinder energy production. So he did that domestically. It also, from an international standpoint, Russia invaded Ukraine with energy money because his actions that hindered U.S. energy production ended up increasing the market share of Russian energy, of Russian oil and natural gas. That allowed Putin to be on very strong financial footing, and essentially, combined with the diplomatic failures, led in part to the invasion of Ukraine, the first major land war in Europe since World War II. His hindering of U.S. energy production and exports led to more oil revenue for Iran, which they had been broke at the end of the first Trump administration. Biden enriched them to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, and Iran was able to essentially use its proxies to launch the October 7th attack against Israel. So we have two wars, the root of which, or a key root of which, is energy. And if the U.S. is supplying the world with cheap, cleaner natural gas, American-made energy, we're going to have more influence. There's going to be more peace. The American people are going to have more prosperity. Our allies are going to have more prosperity, and they don't have to rely on our enemies. We don't have to be enriching our enemies at the expense of America. This was absolutely necessary. The energy policies of the prior administration made no sense for America. And I'll tie it together with just sort of an illustration on the Alaska point. So I worked on Capitol Hill when during one of the many votes to try to open ANWR in Alaska to oil exploration. Alaskans, by the way, have wanted this for generations because they know they have liquid gold under their feet. They want to be able to use these resources for themselves and for the rest of America. But and kind of environmentalists on the left have been against that. So when I worked on the Hill, the vote failed, one of the many failed votes to open this up. Finally, President Trump came in, and when we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we also opened up ANWR. It had been a goal for generations to get this done. It was a critically important project, but the environmental left, some of whose groups were funded by the Russians, would always end up thwarting these efforts. And of course it's supported by the Russians, because we just saw what happens when America doesn't allow itself to exploit its energy resources. Guess who benefits? Russia and Iran. So this has been such a critical issue. I completely understand why he declared an energy emergency. Thank goodness he did, because this is going to help get the American economy back on the right track, and it's going to lead to more peace because we're going to take money and market share away from our adversaries. It is the most common sense thing in the world to do, and it's just incredible to me the way the Biden administration pursued its energy policies. But thank goodness President Trump is back in office and doing the right thing on this.
Outside of the environmental lobby, I think the biggest cheerleader for Biden's energy agenda was Vladimir Putin himself, because it seems like almost every move Biden made on the energy front benefited Russia, benefited Iran, and was to the detriment of the average American citizen. It's truly tragic the extent to which the Biden administration consistently, time after time, put special interests above the needs of both American citizens and our own allies. Because of Biden's energy policies, the world is less safe today. Inflation is far worse, and American innovation grinded to a halt. And so with this national energy emergency, we're hopeful that we can get American innovation back up and running, that we can tame the tiger of inflation, that we can ultimately strengthen our allies and weaken our enemies. It's absolutely necessary to push this national emergency through at this point for all of those reasons. I think what's missing on the left right now, what is not quite clicking with a lot of Democrats, is what time it is. This is not a time to sit back and rest on our laurels and implement only clean energy policies. This is a time in world history when the good guys, the United States, need as much energy as possible if we're going to compete with the likes of China when it comes to industries like AI, for example. China released this last week, a large language model that has huge potential to disrupt and compete and even surpass American models of artificial intelligence. So how are we going to win the space race in AI, in Bitcoin, and in all other areas of technology? We need more energy, and we need it now. And I think you saw the tone deafness from Democrats on full display during a hearing with the incoming Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. And during this exchange, Senator Wyden asked Bessent about the idea as to whether or not we're in a clean energy race with our competitors. And let's give that clip a listen.
Neutral system. The more you reduce carbon, the bigger your tax savings. Now there is a big effort in the Trump administration to reverse it. I think that's going to be bad for the economy, but it is going to be damn good for China because we are in an arms race on clean energy with them. Are you going to be on the side of people who want to unravel this?
Senator Wyden, just so we can frame this for everyone in the room, China will build 100 new coal plants this year. There is not a clean energy race. There is an energy race. China will build 10 nuclear plants this year. That is not solar. I am in favor of more nuclear plants.
There we go. I think that's the biggest takeaway line. China and the US are not in a clean energy race. We're in an energy race, period. And I think that's what's missing among Democrats right now. I think they really just don't understand the moment we're in historically. Brian, curious your take on that hearing and this idea of a clean energy race versus an energy race.
I mean, Scott Bessent is 100% correct. And I'm very glad I'm actually glad Senator Wyden asked him that question. And I'm especially glad that he answered it in that way, because that's where we are. If we don't have cheap, abundant energy, we're going to lose. We're going to lose the race against our competitors, and our country is not going to be able to grow in the way it needs to increase our standard of living. So it was a pitch perfect answer. And I look forward to Secretary Bessent's confirmation, hopefully in the next week or so. It should have happened already, in my opinion. He has plenty of support from the senators. He is virtually uncontroversial as far as I can tell. And with answers like that, I expect he'll do a very good job. So really, really important exchange, and shows that he gets it, obviously. I mean, he's been a successful investor for decades, so that doesn't surprise me that he gets it, but I'm very glad to see the answer.
Yeah. Donald Trump has put together a star-studded, high IQ cabinet, but I think Bessent is among the shining stars in that group. Just a truly brilliant person, and it's on full display during the Senate hearing that we saw last week. So with a lot of that serious talk out of the way, let's talk about a couple serious things, but also a couple lighthearted things. Let's go to our grab bag section of the week. We had a lot of good memes, a lot of good content, a lot of good organic Trumpian moments coming out of the inauguration this week. My favorite of all time was the following clip, which is Donald Trump dancing with the sword live on national TV. Let's give that a watch. FCA. You got Melania in the background. I've never seen so much animation out of Melania. Melania letting loose a little bit, which is something new for all Americans to see. She was always so buttoned up and polished, but even she's having a little bit of fun there. And of course, Donald Trump is just feeling it, waving the sword around like a wand. I mean, what a moment. And this was the day after Donald Trump danced with the Village People on national TV to YMCA. This dance he's doing right now is called the Trump dance. And for those who don't know, who are on TikTok, which good for you for not being on TikTok, but it's gone viral. It's a viral dance. And I think represents, as funny as this is, it's actually serious at the same time, because it represents what's been a long time coming, which is the welcoming Trump back into the fold of American popular culture as not someone who's persona non grata, who's spray tan Hitler, who's the second coming of Genghis Khan, but as a beloved American icon. People forget that before 2016, Donald Trump was adored by millions of people across the country on both sides of the aisle. He was seen as, of course, a brash figure, but someone who was much beloved. And then 2016, everything changed. And I don't think it was his positions as much as the media and Democratic political campaign against him. But more and more, we're seeing that Donald Trump is who he's always been, which is a very bold businessman who's funny. Honestly, one of the funniest presidents who's ever been in the Oval Office, in my opinion.
Definitely the funniest, for sure. And this just in, Alvin Bragg indicts Trump for felon in possession of a weapon due to his sword dance. I
Just a
think
matter
we're
of time.
past that, thank God, but I wouldn't have been surprised if it were 6 months ago.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like that's the world that we were living in at that time. And then so we have Donald Trump once again. I think he's relaxed now that he is not constantly under siege by an American media that hates him so much. Of course, they're always attacking him. But in addition to Donald Trump, you have his heir apparent, Barron Trump, who turned a lot of heads this weekend just by how tall he is. Let's watch one of these videos from this last weekend. There you go, Barron Trump. I had to do a double take when I saw this because he really does look that tall sometimes. He is a behemoth of a young man and just an interesting dude. He looks more like Donald Trump than I think any of his other children. And he also appears to be the crypto whisperer for Donald Trump. The rumor is that Barron played a pretty significant role in helping Donald Trump, the president, come around to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Those are just some of my grab bag items from this last week. Brian, I know you got a couple as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about Free Ross. So Ross Ulbricht, Trump pardoned him. This is a fulfillment of a campaign promise. So Dylan, can you throw up, I had two graphics here. So one is from the Free Ross account, which I understand was operated by his mother, Lynn, for years while Ross was in prison, tweeting out that he was granted a full pardon by President Trump. And so they're very excited. And then we have the headline, I think, from the New York Post. Ross was sentenced to life without parole. He founded a website, essentially, Silk Road. There was a lot of illicit activity on the website. He was young when he did it. He was in his 20s. He has said in interviews he wasn't even really sure if it would work. It worked. Bad guys exploited it. And it was kind of a moment for Bitcoin, for the technology that people were using. Of course, some people used it for bad purposes. But if you think about it, like, I don't know, Section 230, and, some people do bad things on Facebook. Zuckerberg doesn't get life in prison for that. Ross's case was a little bit complicated, but the bottom line is that he was sentenced to life without parole. And some of the actual drug dealers, people who did bad things using the Silk Road, got like 5 years in prison. I mean, people who actually harmed people's lives. So the treatment of Ross, I think, a lot of people, I think, in the libertarian community would say that it was because he created something where you could be anonymous, where you could transact with freedom. And that was so scary to people that they had to make an example of him and lock him away and throw away the key. His sentence was so disproportionate to what he did. It was laughable. It was absurd. A young kid who created a website that other people abused. Now, there are some other accusations flying around that he was engaged in some kind of murder for hire scheme. And that's how they made him seem like this horrible devil. He wasn't charged or convicted with any of that. They couldn't prove any of that. It really was about, creating the website. So he became a real cult figure of government abuse, of abusive prosecution, of abusive sentencing, and all the evidence in the world shows that he's contrite. He wants to be a productive member of society. He regrets making, choices that landed him in prison and hurt his family so much. This was a very welcome event, the pardoning of Ross. Free Ross was a hashtag for many years. It galvanized really millions of people around the world. And we saw when Trump went to the Libertarian Convention and he came to the Bitcoin Convention, one of the things he promised was, enough is enough. It's time to free Ross. Elect me, and on day one, I'll free Ross. And it was about 36 hours, I think, into Trump's presidency, maybe a little less than that he did. He freed Ross. He had only promised to commute his sentence, but he wound up giving him a full pardon. And now he is home with his family. He's about a 40-year-old man now, following all the investigation and trial and conviction and sentencing and everything. I think he was about 28 or so when he went into prison. He famously gave an interview with Bitcoin Magazine from prison, where he talked about how he had been put in solitary confinement for months at a time in the dark by himself, that will drive a person insane. Why is a 20-something creator of a website in solitary confinement? It's absurd. So his treatment, I think, should shine a light on the fact that our justice system isn't perfect, and sometimes really unjust things have happened. So I think freeing Ross, Trump kept his word to the libertarian community. He followed through, and there are a lot of people celebrating because of it. And I really think that Ross, he's committed to do this. I think he's going to use his life productively and to make people's lives better. And so this is a very, very good thing that Trump did. Glad he'd promised it during the campaign, and I'm glad he fulfilled the promise today. And a lot of really high profile people have been championing Ross's cause for years. I mean, Senator Rand Paul, Congressman Thomas Massey, Congressman Warren Davidson, Ambassador Rick Grinnell, who I know very well and like a lot. Donald Trump Jr. even had gotten in on the Free Ross hashtag because people saw this case as incredibly unfair. It was an anti-freedom, anti-liberty abuse by the government. So this is a great move by the president. I was actually doing a Twitter Spaces with Bitcoin Magazine and some people from Kraken and the head of the Libertarian Party and a number of other people talking about how the president might follow through on his promise. This is on the first full day in office on January 21st in the evening. And while we were doing the Spaces discussing the case, Trump issued the pardon. So the timing could not have been better. It was very exciting. Great moment. And just another little drop stone in the pond where we'll see ripples as the golden age is upon us and continues to flourish. So congratulations, Ross. Welcome home.
Yeah, and that's huge and so symbolic as well. When you consider that Ross himself was a scapegoat that the government used to prosecute in a way the entire Bitcoin community, his heavy sentence makes more sense in that context. They sentenced him to 2 life sentences without parole plus 40 years. Such an egregious sentence plus solitary confinement. Essentially what the federal government was trying to do is punish the entire Bitcoin community for having the gall to invent a currency that they don't control. They were trying to punish one man on behalf of the entire community. It was so wrong, so evil, in my view. And the fact that we have Donald Trump pardoning Ross on his first full day in office is truly historic and symbolic of how much Bitcoin's fortunes have shifted, not only in terms of price, but in terms of societal acceptance as well. Bitcoin is now championed by the man who occupies the Oval Office. This is a historic time for our country, a historic time for Bitcoin, a historic time for the world. And I think if there's one big takeaway from Donald Trump fulfilling his promise to free Ross, it's that he's made a lot of other promises in regards to Bitcoin as well. People should feel bullish on his commitment to fulfilling those promises. Of course, I'm speaking of the national Bitcoin stockpile that he mentioned. We'll wait and see what happens with that, but I'm optimistic that we'll see a Bitcoin reserve either in the form of an executive order or legislation from Senator Lummis or both. There's so much to look forward to. Like you mentioned, Brian, this is the golden age of America. Could be the golden age of Bitcoin as well. There's just so much optimism, so much hope. It's tangible in the air. It's a good time to be alive.
That's right. There was an issue with the stockpile because a lot of the U.S. government's held Bitcoin came from illicit Silk Road transactions. I think the ultimate, now I don't think it to the extent any of that belonged to Ross. I think because there was illicit use on the Silk Road, and his conviction, a pardon doesn't mean the conviction never happened or that there weren't any ill-gotten gains or anything like that. I think case law dictates that an asset forfeiture isn't necessarily cured by a pardon. So to the extent any of the Bitcoin that was seized that the government holds and that would become a part of the stockpile, I still believe that it will become part of the stockpile. But my understanding is that Ross still holds quite a lot of Bitcoin that he has legally. So I think this split screen of Ross being freed from prison is and was a wealthy man, but now he can actually live as a wealthy man, and America having a strategic Bitcoin stockpile to help us become a wealthy nation again, is what a development with a stroke of a pen, or maybe 2 strokes of a pen. We'll see what happens with the Bitcoin reserve, but dizzying and amazing, I guess, are the 2 words I would use. But what a great chat today. I feel like we need to be departing with YMCA playing and doing the Trump dance after this like incredible few days of activity. I don't know if you can pull that up, Dylan. Don't if you can't. There we go.
What an outro.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll be back next time on the Peer to Peer Policy Pod. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.